Peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laik Siddiqui, the father of Holophase. Remember the language we are learning. There is one field, phi, the holophase, one continuous cyclic movement from which all of reality unfolds. When phi begins to change, its first derivatives appear, and with them, the three dimensions show themselves at once: time as omega, space as kappa, and motion as nu, built from both. Every higher derivative is a finer question about how phi changes, and each one casts three shadows together: a time shadow, a space shadow, and a motion shadow. These echoes mix and weave into one another, forming the patterns we call fields, particles, bodies, thoughts, and worlds. In this picture, everything that exists is a living tapestry of phi, endlessly echoing through its derivatives and their dimensional shadows. Today, we learn to listen to what is not said. In this part 46, we validate a result that is often dismissed. We define silence as information. This is the firewall mechanism that elevates a disciplined, reproducible null result to the status of a license finding about phi. The core revelation is affirmative. Yes, nothing found can be a scientific result if it is produced under disciplined search. Silence becomes informative when it is reproducible, scope-bounded, representation-independent, and generated under declared protocols. Absence, properly certified, becomes data, not embarrassment. The skill you will gain is that of a null result auditor. You will learn to distinguish a meaningful silence, a structured absence, from mere noise or failure, and to license it as a boundary marker on the map of knowledge. Our core question challenges a deep bias in scientific culture. Can nothing found be a scientific result? This question targets the publication bias and the action bias that plague the knowledge ecosystem. There is immense pressure to find something, a signal, a correlation, a new particle, a significant effect. Experiments that find nothing are often not published, not cited, and not valued. This creates a distorted picture of reality, where only positive detections are visible, making the world seem more patterned and predictable than it actually is. This bias leads to wasted resources as others pursue blind alleys, and it obscures the true shape of our ignorance. The firewall's mechanism for licensing silence corrects this. It applies our core axiom with equal force. Rules do not become real by elegance, consensus, or tradition. They earn a license only by surviving falsification, variation, independence, and scope discipline. A disciplined null result is a rule of a special kind, a rule of absence. It states, within this license scope, under these protocols, no rule of type X exists. For this rule of absence to earn a license, it too must survive falsification. Could a better experiment find something? Variation. Do other methods also find nothing? Independence. Do different teams concur? And scope discipline. Is the nothing claimed only for a precisely defined region of omega, kappa, and nu? Licensing silence is necessary, because the failure mode it prevents is the illusion of omnipresent pattern. If we only record when we hear a signal, we begin to believe the universe is nothing but signals. We forget the void, the chaos, the genuinely lawless regions. This illusion makes science seem magically successful everywhere, until one day a critical engineering project or policy, built on the assumption that a pattern must exist, fails catastrophically because the pattern was never there. By formally licensing silence, we build an honest accounting of both knowledge and its limits. We know not only what is there, but also what is provably not there. The formal meaning in Holophase terms is the quantification of absence. Consider a search protocol P. This protocol defines a specific way of interrogating phi. It involves a licensed observational window, W, with specific omega scale, kappa resolution, nu sensitivity, a data processing pipeline, pi, a detection threshold, theta, a target rule family, G target, the type of pattern we are looking for example, a periodic signal, a spatial correlation, a conserved quantity. The protocol P is applied, yielding an outcome. A positive result is a licensed rule G from the family G target. A null result is the certified failure to produce any such G that meets the detection threshold theta. The core revelation states that for this null result to be informative silence, it must possess four properties. Reproducible. The same protocol P applied by an independent team to a comparable phi region must yield the same null result within statistical expectation. Scope bounded. The silence must be explicitly bounded to the specific omega, kappa, or nu domain of the search. It is not a claim about never anywhere, but about not here under these conditions. 3. Representation independent. The null result should not depend on a trick of representation. If you change coordinate systems, filtering methods, or basis functions within the license set, the absence should persist. 4. Generated under declared protocols. The entire search protocol P, window W, pipeline P, threshold theta must be fully documented and licensed. The silence is only valid relative to that protocol. When a null result meets these criteria, it carries genuine information. It tells us that phi in that region under that parsing does not manifest the kind of structure we were seeking. The triunity provides the natural framework for classifying this silence. Not all silences are the same. We can categorize them by the failure mode of the search, which reveals something about the nature of the phi domain. We define a triunity silence classification. No stable temporal structure is found. Within the licensed omega windows, the phi signal shows no reproducible periodicities, no decay constants, no predictable sequences. The time series is incoherent. This is not noise. It is a certified absence of temporal pattern. No spatial invariants are found. Across the licensed kappa resolutions and representations, the phi field shows no stable symmetries, no compressible structures, no identifiable clusters or boundaries. The spatial pattern is genuinely amorphous or random beyond compression. No reproducible motion relations are found. No equations of motion, force laws, or conservation laws can be stabilized within the licensed new frames. The dynamics are irreducibly erratic or context-dependent. The most profound category. Failure of joint omega kappa nu locking. Even if fleeting patterns appear in one dimension, they cannot be associated with consistent patterns in the other two. The three shadows refuse to coalesce into a stable object. This is the signature of a domain approaching genuine unwritability. Classifying the silence tells us what kind of nothing we have found. This is valuable information. This connects directly to energy as tally. A null result in an energy search is a stable null tally. Imagine searching for a new form of energy transfer in a system. You meticulously account for all known forms: kinetic, potential, thermal, chemical. You sum them. The ledger balances perfectly, with no residual unaccounted for term. This balanced ledger, achieved under a high sensitivity protocol, is a silence result. It tells you no hidden energy channel exists within the sensitivity theta of this experiment. This is not a failure. It is a positive constraint on theory. It rules out entire classes of models that would require such a hidden channel. A stable null tally is a legitimate, powerful scientific outcome when the search conditions, the accounting protocol, are satisfied and declared. The operational interpretation of license silence is found in high-energy physics, the non-discovery of certain predicted particles. In astronomy, the non-detection of signatures for extraterrestrial intelligence in specific surveys, and in clinical trials, the finding that a drug has no effect beyond placebo. These are not non-results. They are exclusion results. They shrink the space of possible realities. The firewall role here is that of the null result licensor. When a research program concludes with a disciplined null result, it can submit its findings to this gate. The firewall auditor does not ask, "What did you find?" She asks, "How did you search? And how sure are you that there was nothing to find?" She audits the protocol P for completeness, checks the reproducibility claim, verifies the scope bounds, and ensures representation independence. If the audit passes, the firewall issues a silence license. This license publishes the null result, the full protocol P, and its triunity silence classification. It enters this result into the ledger of knowledge as a certified absence. Let us formalize this. We define a silence certification function, XI. This function takes the search protocol P and the experimental outcome data E. XI PE, certified silence, classification, scope. The function checks, did the outcome contain any rule meeting threshold? If yes, certification fails. It's a positive result. If no, it checks if protocol was sufficiently sensitive. This is often expressed as a confidence level, CL, or an exclusion limit. For example, we exclude the existence of rule type G at 95% confidence level for parameter values greater than X. It assigns a triunity silence classification based on which aspect of the search failed. It outputs the certified scope, the precise region in omega kappa nu space where the silence is valid. A simple equation for the core of a silence result is the exclusion statement. For a sought parameter x, like the strength of a new force, the amplitude of a signal, the result is often x limit with confidence CL. This is read as the parameter x is less than the limit x limit with a confidence of CL%. This is a positive statement about absence. The prediction and falsification for license silence are inherent in its reproducible nature. Prediction for genuine license silence. If the silence is genuine, if it reflects a true absence of structure in that phi domain under that protocol, then repeated independent searches will converge on the same null result. Subsequent experiments with comparable or better sensitivity will confirm the exclusion. The silence is stable. Falsification condition for a silence claim. The silence claim is falsified if a later search under the same or stricter protocol conditions uncovers structure. If a new experiment with better sensitivity or a broader window finds the signal that was previously declared absent, then the original silence was only provisional. It was a limit of that earlier experiment, not a truth about phi. The silence license is revoked and replaced by a license for the newly discovered rule. The license consequence is one of elevation and preservation. What is allowed? You are allowed to conduct searches that yield no positive detection. You are allowed to report these null results. However, to have your null result licensed as meaningful scientific information, you must document and adhere to a disciplined, pre-declared search protocol, demonstrate its sensitivity, and bound the scope of the absence. What is forbidden? You may not hide or fail to publish well-conducted experiments that find nothing. Claim an absence without specifying the sensitivity and scope of your search. We found no pattern is meaningless. We found no periodic signal with amplitude greater than A in the frequency range F1 to F2 is information. Treat a null result as a personal or professional failure. What happens when silence is certified? The license consequence is cartographic and preservative. Certification, silence is elevated to a boundary marker, not ignored. The result is entered into the registry of certified silences. It is given a persistent identifier. It becomes a constraint that future theories must respect. It acts as a signpost. Beyond this point, within this valley, no water flows. This prevents future expeditions from wasting effort looking for water there, unless they have a revolutionary new way to search. Let us illustrate with an example that has shaped lives and landscapes: the exhaustive, generations-long search for a predictable, seasonal law governing the exact weeks of the Kariz spring surge in the foothills of the Spinchau. A Kariz is a traditional underground irrigation system, a gentle cousin to the Kanat. Its flow is fed by snowmelt from high mountains. For centuries, farmers relied on an expected surge in flow in early spring. Yet, the exact timing, the omega event, was notoriously variable. Priests and elders posited rules based on star signs, animal behavior, and ritual calendars. These were positive but false rules. Then, a systematic, multi-decade observation project began. Using simple water gauges, a new measurement, and daily records, an omega measurement, a null result protocol P was established. The search was for a deterministic rule G, linking winter precipitation, measured at high stations, a cup or new input, to the date of the spring surge, the omega output, within a window of plus or minus 5 days. After 30 years of data, the search yielded silence. No deterministic rule of the tested families, linear, polynomial, threshold-based, could predict the surge date within the 5-day window. The scatter was irreducible. The protocol was documented. Precipitation gauges at locations L1, L2, daily flow measurements, specific rule families tested, a 5-day prediction threshold, theta. This null result was licensed as silence. Tri-unity classification. Omega silence, specifically failure to predict a precise omega timing from cup or new precursors, bounded to the Spingar foothills for snowmelt-driven Kariz, with the specific precipitation gauges used. Information content. The silence told the community that searching for a precise calendar rule was futile. The absence of a deterministic rule was now a certified fact. This licensed silence had immense practical value. It redirected effort. Instead of trying to predict the day, farmers shifted to adaptive management. They invested in small storage reservoirs, buffering the omega uncertainty, planted more drought-resistant crops, reducing new dependence on precise timing, and installed simple telemetry to monitor flow in real time, changing the window from prediction to response. The silence result, by clearly marking the boundary of predictability, spurred innovation and resilience. It was more valuable than a fragile, false positive rule would have been. The falsification condition would be met if, decades later, a new model incorporating detailed soil moisture profiles and high-resolution snowpack maps from satellites could predict the surge within 2 days. The original silence license would be annotated, its scope narrowed, and the new predictive rule licensed. But the silence would remain valid for its historical context and its original protocol. It correctly reported the state of knowledge at that time. The skill you gain as a null result auditor is the ability to hear the shape of absence. You learn to evaluate a negative finding by asking, protocol, was the search method sound, sensitive, and pre-declared? Sensitivity, what was the detection threshold? What could have been missed? Reproducibility, Would another team following the same protocol likely get the same nothing? Scope. Exactly where and when does this nothing apply? What are the omega, kappa, nu boundaries? 5. Classification. What kind of silence is it? Omega, kappa, nu, or tri-silence? This skill transforms the discouragement of a negative result into the productive activity of boundary mapping. Let us reiterate the core axiom this mechanism upholds. Rules do not become real by elegance, consensus, or tradition. They earn a license only by surviving falsification, variation, independence, and scope discipline. A certified silence is a rule that has survived its own kind of falsification, the possibility of a positive detection, and demonstrates variation through reproducibility and scope discipline. It is a legitimate member of the licensed knowledge ecosystem and the corresponding firewall action. When a rule fails, we do not believe harder. We tighten, downgrade, or retire its license. When a search for a positive rule fails, we do not discard the effort as worthless. We tighten the protocol. We certify the resulting silence. We elevate it to a boundary marker. Let us now crystallize the epistemic function of this part 46. We have defined silence as information. This firewall mechanism validates discipline null results as scientific knowledge. It establishes that a reproducible, scope-bounded, representation-independent absence of a pattern generated under a declared protocol is a legitimate finding about phi. It classifies silence using the tri-unity, omega, kappa, nu, or tri-silence, and connects it to the concept of a stable null tally in energy accounting. The firewall acts as the null result licensor, auditing search protocols to certify meaningful absences and entering them into the public ledger as constraints. The explicit prediction for genuine silence is convergence. Independent searches replicate the null result. The explicit falsification condition is the discovery of structure under the same search conditions, which demotes the silence from a permanent boundary to a historical limit. The license consequence is historic elevation to a boundary marker, ensuring silence is preserved and used to guide future inquiry. With this, the epistemic firewall achieves a profound symmetry. It licenses both presence and absence. It governs not only what we can say about phi, but also what we can definitively say is not there. It builds a complete, honest map that includes both the continents of knowledge and the surveyed, certified oceans of ignorance. Yet, this creates a final, profound responsibility. If silence carries information, if a certified absence is a precious piece of knowledge about the limits of phi patterns, then we must not lose it. This information must survive. It must be preserved through time, through changes in language, through the rise and fall of institutions. The negative result is often the first thing forgotten, the first record to decay. If silence carries information, it must be preserved for civilization. Peace be upon you.